Well, Herb, thank you so much for helping with my project. I know you came to the North Houston Space Society to speak to us, but for everybody else, could you say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I guess the thing most people would be interested in is that I spent 42 years working for NASA, most at the Johnson Space Center, but I also spent a year at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida and 10 years at NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C., actually in two separate tours there. And so I I grew up here, though, just a few miles. Boy, sometimes I think how lucky I was that my parents moved to a little town called League City. It's just south of Houston, which is about 5 miles from the driveway of the house I grew up in to the what was then called the Manned Spacecraft Center. And so literally when it opened in 1963 and the first astronauts moved to Houston to start working and living there and brought their families with them, of course, their kids were my friends and classmates in middle school, and then of course all through high school and college, and still today, thank goodness, with for social media, I'm friends with most of them, and some that I didn't even know back then just because of our connection 50 something years later. So anyway, the space program is my life. I when I it's funny, kind of a funny story. One of my best friends from NASA, we worked together for God 35 years, and we both retired, and we were out having lunch one day, and I was mentioning something about something I was doing, some NASA related thing, and he said, asked me something like, well, what are you doing? You're retired. He plays golf every day. And I said, I can't stop. This is my life. I have to stay involved. And so yeah, I now been in January. I will have been retired for 4 years. But I still so mostly what I do now is volunteering. But actually, and if you look at my LinkedIn profile, it says that I'm an actor. I spend more time doing community theater, which I started 40 years ago, and then took a break while I got married and had kids, and now they're all gone, and I've got free time again. So I do spend a lot of time with theater and acting, but I'm still very heavily involved with space, as you probably know. I'm on the board of directors for the NASA Alumni League, and I volunteer at Space Center Houston, and I can't go on site any longer, although I have my retirees badge. It allows me to go on site at the Johnson Space Center, but they weren't even allowing employees on site for a while there. They finally, unless you were, oh, what do they call it, essential, literally worked in mission control, or were an astronaut and had to be there for training, you had to work from home. And they've reopened that up a little bit now, not entirely, but so I do miss getting to go on site and seeing my old friends, and just checking things out. But anyway, hopefully that'll give you some idea of uh, what I am and where I came from.
Yeah, I should mention too, my wife, I was telling her I was going into interview today for my project. She's like, "Oh, Herb, I love Herb." So she really liked your presentation at the North Houston Space
Oh,
Society. So
oh yeah, that was about a year and a half ago now.
it
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was, yeah.
yeah.
So and she also has a business background, and a lot of our speakers get really big into the technical areas, and it's hard for them to connect with kind of a broader set. But I think you've managed to make it accessible.
That's right. I do remember meeting your wife now that day. Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's funny you talk about going to the Johnson Space Center. I remember in the 1980s, before Space Center Houston was built, visitors would just wander around the campus like regular employees, and
Oh, yeah.
and the exhibits were scattered throughout the different buildings. And it was a really, I felt like it felt a much more real experience than
Mhm.
Space Center Houston, because I
Yeah.
mean, just with Space Center Houston, they do a really good job of explaining things, and it's
Mhm.
very immersive and interactive, but at the same token, it seems contrived and Disneylandish.
Yeah, again, the only way you can get on site is on their tram, and you get on their little tram and you ride down the street, and they let you off and hurried you into the building you're getting to see, and then they hurried you back onto the tram, and lots of things you don't even get to see. One of my favorite places there is the Astronaut Memorial Tree Grove, where they've got trees dedicated to. There's no one buried there, but trees dedicated to astronauts that have passed away, and a few non-astronauts, flight directors, and so on, but mostly astronauts. But it just the tram just drives right. I think it slows down, but you don't get to experience that at all. But oh, absolutely. I worked building one is the main administrative building there, and I oh my gosh, I spent most of my career in offices in building one. I worked on floor. It's 9 floors. I had offices on first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and seventh floors. I never had an office on the eighth or the ninth floor, and so a lot of times my uh, office was a window office, and so it on the one side of the building where I luckily got to spend most of my time, it was I could see there was kind of a path that most of the visitors followed to go from the so-called museum. It was just a small area that went to the cafeteria, where there was also a gift shop, and so most of the people traveled this walkway, and a lot of us spent a lot of time looking out that window, just watching the if something would catch our eye, watching the visitors go by, and at some point we actually missed that.
That's kind of an interesting
When to
point.
stop.
In addition to it being a more real experience for the people visiting, um, I mean, maybe it was a constant reminder to people that work there of kind of why you are doing what you are doing.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because even in my last year there or so, I would be out walking from one building to another, and I would see a tram go by full of people. And the Space Center Houston is the most popular museum in the entire city of Houston. More
Oh,
people go there I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they've reached 1 million people yet in a year, but tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of people every year go there. It's incredible. But so anyway, I would see one of the trams go by, people looking around and waving, and I would think, wow, these people paid $30 to get on this tram just to drive through and look at this place that they're paying me to come to every day. How lucky is that? But yeah, and so Rocket Park, where the Saturn V is, I spent a lot of time in there, just looking around, and I'm not exaggerating. I can't think of a time I went in there and didn't hear at least one person speaking a foreign language.
oh wow.
So it's literally people from all over the world. It's not just, Texans or Houstonians. People from all over the world come there.
Yeah, and it's amazing. But people pointed out that NASA is pretty much the only federal agency that people actually get T-shirts and sweaters and put stickers on their car about. I mean, when's the last time you've seen like a USPS sticker on on a car that didn't actually belong to the USPS?
IRS or
Yeah, exactly. Woo! IRS. They're a very taxing organization.
well, that's funny too. And it wasn't until I first started getting on social media in 2009, which was fairly early, but there were a lot of other people who started before I did. And so now and you probably know, I'm all over Facebook and Twitter and even Instagram. And I have 50,000 followers on LinkedIn. But I say that because I've seen now that, again, literally people all over the world. I mean, people in Poland, you know, wear NASA T-shirts and NASA logos, and Australia, New Zealand, Brazil. It just I mean, and that's for NASA. I mean, there's the Japanese have a space agency, the Russians have a space agency, the European Space Agency, but there's something about NASA that just really draws people. It's incredible.
And what do you think that is?
Well, I, I haven't given that much thought, but I suppose it was NASA, not ESA or Roscosmos or one of those other space agencies that took our astronauts to the moon and back. Uh, and a couple of other things like that. I mean, certainly the International Space Station is 14 countries, and the Russians have their own segment just like we do, and the Japanese and Europeans are all big players in that. But I don't know. Maybe it does go back to that. The moon landing, and that's really something that no other country has done. No other space agency has done yet. I think the next time we do it, hopefully in 4 years or so, I suspect it'll be much more of an international partnership though than that first those first visits were.
Yeah, it's really amazing to see. I think the European Space Agency is building sort of the um, service module for Orion, and then you got
Mm,
Canada building the Canadian arm for the lunar outpost, and then you have JAXA talking about building a rover for the astronauts on the moon. It's kind of interesting to
yeah,
see.
yeah. That's a good thing for us.
Yeah, I think it helps in many different ways. One, um, we're about to see a transition again in terms of the leadership of the country, and it seems like every single time, NASA ends its previous programs and starts new ones, only for those not to be completed by the time the next administration comes through.
Oh yeah, boy, I lived through that a few times. The obviously the Constellation program comes to mind. I was actually I spent most of my career in the kind of moving around between the space shuttle and space station programs, and I would literally go back and forth, shuttle to station, back to shuttle, back to station, back to shuttle for the first 30 years or so. And in the last 10 years or so, my boss moved me. I didn't ask to be moved to the uh, flight operations, so it was not working in a program anymore. It was the mission control and astronaut office and aircraft ops and astronaut training and all that. And I remember my reaction at first was like, oh my God, I'm too old to learn this new stuff. But oh my goodness, I enjoyed that last 10 years so much. I had special access to the neutral buoyancy lab and the space vehicle mock-up facility where the astronauts train for spacewalks and for living inside, and mission control, and so access that most of the NASA employees didn't even have. And so that, plus the fact that I had grown up with NASA and knew so many stories. And this, I was in Pete Conrad's living room with his family when Apollo 12 splashed down at the end of their mission. And so I got to do. I was tasked. I loved every minute of it, of giving tours to visitors of all of those places. And of course, a lot of the people who worked there and otherwise would have been giving the tours were happy that they weren't being pulled away from their job. They were more than happy to let me lead those tours. So if there were visitors from NASA headquarters, or sometimes an author would come in to talk about their book, or any number of personal friends and family, in fact, believe it or not, my last week there, it was the my official retirement date was January 3rd. So my last work week was literally the last week of December, which there's not really hardly anything going on, even if and I normally would have taken vacation time then anyway, because there's just nothing going on. And so especially since I was at the end of my retirement and didn't really have any assignments, there was not much for me to do. So the last 5 days, I gave 10 tours. I
Oh
scheduled
wow.
there were so many people who wanted that one last chance to get Herb to take them on a tour of the mission control or the SVMF or the NBL that I scheduled one in the morning and one in the afternoon those last 5 days. And
That's
again,
awesome.
loved every minute of it. There was people would say, I would take them on tours on the weekends or after work or whatever, and they would say, gosh, I can't believe you're spending your own time, you know, taking us on this run. Believe me, there's nowhere on earth I would rather be than right here. Every time I walked into which I can't do, or hardly anybody can do anymore, the old historic Apollo mission control room, I would get goosebumps. No
Uh,
matter how many times I walked in there, I got goosebumps. And so, I loved taking people in there.
That is really neat, and it's great to see that legacy. And I mean, I guess whenever you found out that we were planning to go to the moon in 2024, what was your thought?
Well, so I was happy. I mean, again, I got sidetracked. I think I started to tell you the story about space station and shuttle and back and forth. I did spend a little time in Orion, or the Constellation program, and I had actually been assigned to support and work with the office that was building, or you know tasked with designing and building, providing the new lunar lander. We even had a name, Altair, a name and a logo. And I was, had spent, I don't know, months working with the director of that new office on what we were primarily doing at that point was seeking input from uh, industry about, hey, what kind of ideas do you have for what we should incorporate into the design and development of the new lunar lander? What should it look like, what should it do, all of that kind of thing. And then of course the program was canceled, and of course, as you know, it was, even though the program was canceled, and Altair and Ares, which was going to be the rocket, went away, and the moon landing went away. We got to keep Orion and SLS. So we kind of kept part of what used to be the Constellation program. But anyway, yeah, I was, thrilled, absolutely thrilled that at that point we were, working on a new lunar lander to go back to the moon. This was 2008, I think, when I was involved in that project.
I
So,
know, according to those timelines, we should have a base on the moon right now.
well, and that's what made me think about that when you said, what did I think about it? I would, I would love to get there by 2024. I'm not convinced we're going to make it by then. I think that was an arbitrary date that the current administration, thinking that they might get another term, would hope before that second term ended, they something they would accomplish. I mean, again, I would love to get there before 2024, but I personally, not sure we'll make it. And again, the same kind of thing, I'm not even sure the whole concept is nailed down completely again, with the gateway, and I mean, I know they've already started, awarding contracts for, I think, in fact, I think I read the other day that they've even awarded SpaceX a contract to make the first delivery of, logistics supplies, uh, and the thing's not even built or in orbit yet. And so I mean, again, I'm really happy to see that progress. But the thing that sticks in my mind is, go back a couple of years, 2006. I was involved in the very early the beginning of what was called the COTS, Commercial Orbital Transportation Services, which was really the beginning of SpaceX, coordination with NASA. And so I was the business guy involved in that. And so I still have, and so what, and you probably know, we basically, we couldn't award contracts because we weren't satisfying a government requirement. According to the federal acquisition regulations, you can't use a contract to to acquire something that's not the government doesn't need, and we didn't need that at the time. We wanted it, we didn't need it, and so we used, not that anybody really cares about the distinction, but we used what we call Space Act agreements. It was a different instrument authorized by the Space Act, which is why they called them Space Act agreements. But anyway, all that to say was we issued a solicitation to, I think we limited it to U.S. companies and said, hey, you know, do your best, come up with whatever idea. We're not telling you it needs to look a certain way or be shaped a certain way. However you think you can design and build some kind of spacecraft that will deliver cargo and eventually people to the International Space Station. Give us your knock yourself out. Give us your best ideas, and we're going to pick the best ones, and we're going to provide seed money, funding to help you, because it's just not economically viable for those companies to spend millions or billions of dollars designing that spacecraft that, at least at the time, there was no uh, business for. And so, anyway, we picked two companies that won the competition, SpaceX and a company called Rocket Plane Kistler. And I still have today the signature page that Elon Musk signed, agreeing to the Space Act agreement. Again, it wasn't a contract. And that was this whole long story is to make the point that was 2006.
Wow.
So that was 14 years ago. Some people like to say, oh, because Trump was trying to take credit for this, and people are saying, no, that was Obama. No, it was even before Obama. This was Bush,
Right.
2006, when we awarded that Space Act agreement to SpaceX and Rocket Plane Kistler. And so I can't get it out of my mind. It took 14 years to go from that, admittedly, just paper, ideas, to actually flying, a certified SpaceX mission to the space station. And so, when you talk about doing something in 4 years that is still just something on the drawing board, I'm kind of skeptical. And of course, I wish it hadn't taken 14 years, but again, I have proof. I've shown people that signature page with the Elon Musk 2006, and they're like, wow.
But I mean, their first Dragon cargo delivery to the International Space Station was what, 2014?
I that could be right. I honestly don't remember. It's been several years,
Uh,
and of course, acknowledging that delivering cargo, and even a couple of those blew up and never made it, right? Which is why it took a little bit longer to certify the space vehicle to actually put people in. So, but yeah, I mean, that's what we're talking about, though, and going to the moon is, I think Artemis 1 would just go fly around the moon and without unmanned or uncrewed,
yes.
and Artemis 2 would have a crew, but they wouldn't land. They would just fly around the moon, and then finally Artemis 3 would and I'm not sure if it docks to the uh, uh, orbiting platform there, and then goes down to the surface of the moon, or the gateway. I've lost track of what it was called there for a second.
Well, it's
You know,
changed names many times, so that's
yeah.
probably not not surprising.
My memory's not what it used to be. Either,
But to get the name right, you probably have to look at their latest press release.
yeah, and even that's controversial. I know that there are some NASA veterans, forget the general public, who don't think the whole gateway concept is the right thing to do. So, but that's certainly not my decision, and hopefully the smarter minds will prevail.
So, as we move into this new administration, a lot of people, me included, was kind of hoping that Jim Bridenstine would stay on. And he's already kind of announced that he plans to step down. And
Yeah.
the reasons he gave was he feels like NASA should be headed by somebody that has the ear of the president, who the president trusts. That him staying on would maybe put NASA at a disadvantage. I've gotten received emails from some of the people that come to the North Houston Space Society. There's like, you know, Jim's apparently not as good a guy as we thought. He's partisan and all this other good stuff. And I was just kind of, does Jim's explanations make sense to you, or do you think this is really more of a partisan type thing?
I honestly haven't given it a lot of thought, but I will say, without delving into what I think about what's going on politically, that I was pleasantly surprised at with what Bridenstine has done. I got to meet him at a NASA social back in December at we were in New Orleans at the Michoud assembly facility where they were showing off the stage one of the SLS that was about to be shipped to Stennis Space Center. Uh, and so, again, I wasn't sure what to expect when he was appointed, but again, I've been pleasantly surprised. I think he's done a good job, and so so I have lived through quite a few NASA administrators, um, and I'm not sure I really, and of course, I don't know anything more than anyone else does. Really, just watching the news and reading about it. I'm not sure I buy the argument that, well, it needs to be somebody that has the president's ear, and I think uh, Biden will be perfectly fine. You know, as far as supporting NASA, and it's a we've been very lucky in that sense. It's been very bipartisan in Congress, the support NASA's received. One of the few things that's been bipartisan, and so that's why I guess I think I'm not really sure that I buy that argument, because whether the NASA administrator has the presidency or not, our our support and funding is basically from Congress, who allocates the and authorizes the budget and expenditures, and of course that's another problem, with what and when are we going to do anything. The country's budget is just gone to hell, and I don't know when that's going to get any better. Even for NASA, which again is received support from both sides. I would have been perfectly happy if he had well, I guess it's really not his decision whether he stays or not. Even if he wanted to stay, that would be up to Biden to decide. Of course, I don't know that I've heard Biden really say anything at all about uh, NASA. I did see he had assigned a few people to some group that would be looking at space, and I don't remember the names now, but anyway, again, it's really not up to Bridenstine. But if he had decided that he wanted to stay, because that did happen a few times, the NASA administrator didn't change every single time we had a new administrator, and so certainly, it was a possibility that he could have stayed on if he had wanted to.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So, do you think a lot of people are saying, go to the moon to get ready to go to Mars? Other people are saying you're missing the whole point. What we need to do is develop space infrastructure. The moon's the closest thing. There's lots of things to learn on the moon. We really should be focused on developing the space infrastructure. I don't know if you heard of Paul Spudis. He was a big um, advocate of going to the moon. I think he's over there at the Lunar and Planetary Institute down there. But Anyway, but what are your thoughts? I mean, is the whole goal for us to go to Mars and kind of get that selfie and that first step on Mars, or do you really see we should be building the infrastructure to really expand outward as a civilization with potentially human activity all over the
Um,
place?
boy, I'm just happy that we're in, it's not weightlessness, it's microgravity, right? But and just the technology. I'm sure you've heard this before from other people, that is required to be developed to send people and keep people in space. Uh, joke about Teflon and uh,
Velcro and
yeah,
Tang.
yeah. Well, and of course, actually, neither of those were developed by NASA. We just started using them much more than anyone else. But cell phones and communications and fire retardant, uniforms and medicines and all kinds of things that affect and help people on Earth every single day that they don't even think about or know about. If you were to tell them, the reason we have this is because NASA developed it, eyeglasses and whatever. There's just so much of that again, whether it's to send people to the moon or put them on the surface to do some kind of mining or something, or to send them to Mars or whatever. Just working on the space station. I just want to stay in microgravity and be able and have whatever impetus it is that's requiring us to develop these new technologies and new material. I was just hearing the other day, I was on a Zoom call with the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation, and some guy was talking about the most thermal protective fabric ever designed. You could walk out in freezing temperatures in just a long sleeve shirt.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
What kind of
yeah.
material is that?
Oh, I don't remember. Some kind of. I could send. I'll send you a link later. Yeah,
That would
because it,
sound
it really.
awesome.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if it keeps you from cold, it should keep you from heat too. Firefighters and really
Yeah. Well,
flexible stuff. That would be
well,
fantastic.
and even one of the things he was talking about is the military, and they have tents, in places that are either really cold or really hot, and either having to heat or cool these tents, and then you make the tent out of this material. Apparently, you don't
You
need
don't
it.
you don't have all this leakage.
Yeah, and so yeah, I will. I'll have the uh, Twitter or something. Or just email. I'll send you a link to. I might even be able to get a link to the actual video of the discussion. But
Oh
in any
wow.
case, I'll send you some info on it, because it really is interesting. And again, going back to the point I was trying to make, there's just so many advancements in technology and things that have helped almost every human on this planet that come about because we're exploring space. And again, so I don't really have a preference, whether it's the space station or the moon or Mars, or let's do all of them. I mean, certainly I'm a big space advocate. So again, I guess I'm not sure if that answers your question. I don't really have a preference, and I don't think I would love to be still alive, but I don't think I will be when we finally put humans on Mars. So and just because I've met the I think I've met 10 of the 12 moonwalkers at some point in my life. And so, that's kind of cool. And so that's always been so, and I think you might remember from my presentation, I mentioned being in Pete Conrad's living room when Apollo 12 splashed down, that I had uh, jobs with uh, TV networks uh, on site at the Manned Spacecraft Center covering Apollo 11, 12, 13. I was in college for 14, Apollo 15, and a couple of the Skylab missions. And so, again, going back to my days as a teenager, the moon has been something that has just been, kind of magical to me. And I would have loved to have gone there myself. I think it's too late now, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a huge shift in the mindset of humanity when people can look up at the moon and see evidence of human activity. Like, I mean, at that point, it'd be kind of in everybody's face, and a lot of people who didn't give it a thought would probably think, I want to be up there. You know, if there's other people up there, why not me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's not very hospitable, but certainly Mars isn't either. You know, I would love for us to take better care of our own planet right now, but I don't think that needs to stop us from continuing to explore the universe either.
I know we have twice the number of brains on this planet as we did the first time we went to the moon. So we should be able to handle twice as many problems, and they're better connected and better informed. Uh,
Well, and and it's true that there's more computing power in this device right here than there was on the Apollo spacecraft that flew to the moon in the 60s and 70s.
I would even argue, even in the entire Apollo program put together.
Yeah. Well, you're probably right. Yeah, that's. I think some people may think that's an exaggeration, but it's not.
Yeah. A lot of humans were involved in that. I mean, you just like see these rows of controllers, terminals, like not even in the mission control. I'm talking about the people supporting them and like all the back rooms and stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
It's,
yeah.
it was really something. People had to be a lot smarter than too, I think, in some respects.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, because today you can depend on computers to do. Yeah, SpaceX, the Dragon. I'm not sure everybody realizes it. There was there was no need to have any astronauts flying the Dragon. It could have flown there entirely by itself.
In
And
fact, it did, right? I
well,
mean, it
yeah.
was.
I think they may have inserted themselves a little bit in the docking, but it's entirely autonomous. Yeah, and the Apollo spacecraft weren't quite like that.
No, no, the careful alignment, looking out the
Yeah,
windows, trying to
yeah,
see
yeah,
how far stuff is, and
yeah, yeah.
uh,
That's funny. That's still something. I mean, I'm not an astronomer, but the whole lining up the planets to see where you are and if you're headed in the right direction just blows my mind.
oh, absolutely. Well, at least one thing is you don't have to worry about clouds. So,
That's true.
um, so if it was safe and affordable, would you go to space?
Oh, I think I would. I think I would. I've heard so many, astronauts telling me, in person what it was like to ride the space shuttle, and it's it's kind of interesting. I mean, and you can see videos of it shakes so much that you can hardly even read the panels, in front of you. Uh, uh, and so I would have loved to experience that. I'd like to think I was brave enough. I mean, we lost, counting the three in the Apollo 1 fire on the launch pad, 17 astronauts, in a Apollo or shuttle mission. So there was certainly some risk, but I just being around it and seeing it and hearing about it so much, I would love to experience it for myself. It is kind of interesting. Some of the funny stories I've heard from astronauts talking about, I mean, they train for a year or more for these missions, and they live and work with other astronauts, and they hear stories and things, and it's funny. What I can't think of which one it was now, but he was telling me that uh, on the his first shuttle launch, and they experience it in simulators, at least as much as they can simulate it, with the trying to simulate the sound and everything. And he said, uh, in the simulators, when the solid rocket boosters detonated and separated, it was just a little pump, and he said on his first flight, about a minute and a half into it, when the solid rocket boosters released, it was a bang. He wasn't ready for that, but I guess no one told him, that it's a little bit more severe than you experience in the simulator. So anyway, I think I would have loved to just see what that was like.
Yeah, it would have been awesome. And some things start really slowly. Like, I plant some seeds in the garden. I come back and check every day. All I see is dirt, right? And then
Mhm.
after a week or so, you see a little bit of green stuff. And then, about a month or two into it, I mean, it's like all over the place. You're harvesting vegetables every single day and stuff. And, it's just kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
And you could kind of see the same thing with like the internet and with computing.
Mm.
I mean, like the very first like computers are nothing to really get excited about from today's perspective, and then getting the first two to talk to each other over some type of phone wire,
Mhm.
what's that going to do for you? Why not just make one computer twice as big, And then you got like the internet, and I mean, you probably would have a better chance of explaining to somebody why astronauts float in 1990 than email and websites and things like that. But by 2000, everybody knew about email and everybody knew about online shopping.
Yeah.
And I feel like between SpaceX, Origin, the Commercial Lunar Payload Services Program, what you have going on in the UK and in Europe and in Japan and China, I mean, I really feel like the 2020s have the potential to be as transformative in space exploration as the 1990s did with the internet and computing. And
Mm.
as somebody that's kind of like lived through it all and
Mm.
has that perspective, I mean, do you think that's even a possibility, or too optimistic?
Oh yeah, I again, I'll be 70 in about 14 months, and I've certainly lots of people older than me, but I've seen a lot, and seen lots of lots of things change quite a bit, and so I can see how quickly and surprisingly, astonishingly things change, and technology advances. So yeah, I have no doubt that what you described could be very real in the 2020s. I think with like uh, some of the astronauts I've heard speaking about it too, and of course some of them I've heard talking about a year or so ago, before the SpaceX's successful two launches. They weren't so sure that it was safe to put people on those ships yet. I mean, again, anybody can see, like we mentioned earlier, they had two of their rockets explode, and look, space will always be dangerous, and but so watching the SpaceX launches, I've kind of got my fingers crossed, and hoping that, boy, I just like everybody else, but maybe I'm a little more concerned than some other people might be, that this is really still very dangerous, and I hope everything comes out okay. And so I mean, Gus Grissom's two sons are good friends of mine, and I mean, I was just 14 years old when their father died, and you know uh, people don't even get started with me about the moon landings were fake. I mean, I have friends' parents who were killed, working towards completing that mission, and so anyway, I guess all of that to say, even if space becomes you know more affordable and more available, traveling to space, always in the back of my mind, I'm good. I mean, even airplanes, right? Although it doesn't happen very often.
Are cars or bicycles or tennis shoes?
Well, yeah, there's always that risk, and I was at NASA headquarters the day the Challenger exploded, and it was the worst work day of my life, and so not that I'm any more sensitive to tragedies like that than anybody else, but and some of the Columbia astronauts, and actually some of the Challenger astronauts were friends of mine, and so that's always in the back of my mind, and it'd be interesting to see what and if, the result is, if the first time there's an accident involving people who thought, oh, I thought this was just going to be like a carnival ride. And of course, even carnival rides are dangerous, every once in a while. So,
Yeah, I think it's all about the proportion of people that have non that have safe experiences versus not. I mean, if it's 1 out of 1,000, people are like, oh, okay. But if it's like 1 out of 20, people are like, oh, maybe not.
mhm, mhm.
Uh,
Well, and all of that to say, there's one thing I kind of a story or thought I mention every once in a while when I'm talking to a group, and so Gene Kranz was uh, well known for, although he never actually said it, it was a line made for the movie. Failure is not an option, and absolutely that's true. If you're talking about the lives of people, you know, failure is not an option. But I think at the same time, you know, we 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 need to be careful not to overuse that, because I think failure is an option. It needs to be an option. You've heard the line about, if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. And I absolutely believe that wholeheartedly, 100%. And so I guess I say all of that to say that, hey, I know there's risk, and I'm all in support of taking risk. We need to take risk. We have to take risk. That's how we've made it as far as we have. Let's just not discount them, and keep that in mind and do everything we can to mitigate those risks. I mean, even in the business world that I worked in NASA, one of our biggest exercises, even if it's just again, doing business and doesn't involve anyone's life. We had very strict, detailed uh, risk mitigation plans. Identify what the risk was and what is the chance of that happening, and if it happens, how catastrophic is the result, and what are we doing to mitigate that risk. And so that, I mean, it's very, very big in NASA, as I guess it is with a lot of companies. I never worked anywhere else, but
yeah, and the the risk at a lot of other companies are kind of more, is the meeting going to start on time? And you know will will we have an unhappy customer on hold too long? So it's like,
hey, whatever is important. Yeah.
yeah. So a lot of it depends. Well, I really appreciate your time, Herb. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
Oh, not that I can think of. Again, I always enjoy the opportunity to talk about space and NASA with anybody who's interested in listening. So I appreciate you contacting me and offering me the opportunity. And like I said, I will send you that info on that special thermal uh, material that sounds amazing.
That will be good to look at. Well, Herb, I can't wait until this COVID thing's over with and I can come and actually see one of your plays. That has been on
Oh,
my to-do list
oh,
for
well,
so long.
yeah. Actually, I've got some people. I just cut my hair. It was a much better length. A couple of my theater friends thought I at least kind of resembled Joe Biden, and so
Oh,
they made up a script for me. It's kind of, I mean, it's humorous. It's really not making too much fun of him, because I wouldn't have agreed to do it for that. But they sent me a script, and they're actually coming over to my house tomorrow to tape some skits. It's not a whole play or film or anything. It's just some short skits where I'm going to be dressed up in a suit pretending to be Joe Biden. And so, yeah, my first opportunity to act again since the last show I was in, and it ended in February. And so, yeah, boy, I do miss it. Again. I'm on the board of directors for my theater too, and so we meet once a month and talk about what can we do to start performing again. And we've had a few ideas. Actually, uh, this weekend was the first streaming of a show, the first show that our theater has put on. since February. And again, we had to, the rehearsals were done through Zoom mostly. They did do a few together, and used masks as much as possible, but they took them off for the actual filming of it. But yeah, hopefully these vaccines will work, and can be distributed reasonably quickly, and like I said, get back to normal sometime soon. Because boy, especially like lots of other industries, theater people are really really suffering. With this.
Yeah, exactly. Taxi cab drivers, theater people,
Mm,
musicians,
it's yeah.
restaurant
Oh yeah.
people, it's hotel people,
Yeah.
carnivals.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Yeah.
ah. Anyway, it's gonna. Both my children, by the way, are in vaccine trials. One's
Oh.
in the Pfizer study, and the other one's in
Mhm.
AstraZeneca. So
Oh.
they
Oh.
both seem to be doing okay. And
Hmm.
they found out that I guess two of the vaccines have 95% effectiveness. So they're
Yeah.
gonna be trying to get them out there maybe as early as the end of December. So
Oh. Wow. Yeah.
potentially might be turning a corner soon.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll keep my fingers crossed, like
Ab-
everybody else.
Absolutely, and keep your fingers crossed and your mouth candy.
Yeah.
well,
Okay.
well, thank you so much, Herb. Take care.
All right. You bet. See you later. See you, Nate.
Bye bye.